Well, just a couple of months until the midterms, and new polling suggests that Democrats have a notable national ballot advantage, but recent high-profile progressive primary victories are raising questions about the party's future direction. So joining us now, more insight, Victoria Churchill is back with us, political reporter for the Daily Mail, covering the Hill. And you guys have put it out to the people to see what they have to say and how they feel. What did the latest polling show for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me back, Steve. Always great to see you. So we had some polling conducted for our publication in partnership with JL Partners, and this was conducted last week. So, the events of the last 24 to 48 hours are not reflected in this. I just want to make that caveat there. But our polling showed us that Democrats have an advantage on the generic ballot. So that is 50% of our poll respondents would prefer the generic Democrat candidate to 42% preferring a generic Republican. Now, that 8% was unsure, but I think the other thing that's important to point out about this polling is that enthusiasm. So younger voters as well as independent voters made up the least enthusiastic categories of voters. So they were less enthused about going out to vote in November. And I think that's important because if you look at that, 50, and if you look at that 8%, and if you add that to the 42 and you're a Republican, you go, well, okay, great, so we're even. But if Republicans are hoping to win over independents that are not enthusiastic about getting out to vote, that could be a real concern when it comes to November.
Obviously, turnout is going to be huge. Victoria, a couple of things real quick, and I'm going to put a pause on the events of the last 24 hours. We'll get to that in just a second. But based on the polling, we have two things, right? You have the stats that you just went over, but then within the Democratic Party, and I'll use them specifically because this is where we've seen a lot of movement lately, you kind of have this divide, right, between the more progressive candidates and maybe the more centrist candidates. What are you seeing there as far as not just that Democrats might have an advantage, but which type of Democrat has the advantage?
Well, exactly. As you point out, Steve, this is something that I point out in the article, is that the Democrat Party is split. There seems to be, when talking about that enthusiasm, that seems to be with the further left wing of the party. Now, of course, we saw the primaries in New York. I was up there covering those a couple of weeks ago. And then we've also seen that in other places across the country. For example, in Colorado, there was a 30-year incumbent that was ousted by somebody that was in office basically that was alive as long as that incumbent had been in office. So 30-year incumbent versus a 29-year-old upstart candidate. And that just really goes to show that the Democrat Party is looking at this progressive generational shift. Now, again, you said we'd get to the events of the last 24 to 48 hours. I think that really goes to show what that fight between the establishment and the progressives, that is raging fully. Of course, we have the discussion out of Maine that's happening right now, but we also are looking, for example, in states like Michigan, where Mallory McMorrow dropped out. She was also more of that progressive upstart kind of candidate. And she said that she was suspending her campaign, really leaving that show down as well, up to an establishment-backed candidate, primarily Haley Stevens, and then Abdul Al-Sayed running in that progressive lane in Michigan. And early voting has already started in that state.
So real quick, Victoria, in just a few seconds if we can, the big developments coming out of Maine yesterday and in the last 24 hours, what do you see happening there?
Well, I mean, Plattner is done. The the DSCC, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, which is the Senate Democrat arm, national arm, is saying that they're not going to spend any money in that race. If Democrats want to take down Susan Collins, they need a different candidate. Now, Collins, there's a lot of discussion about elder lawmakers on the Hill as well, for example, with the Mitch McConnell situation. But Collins actually seems to, have the stamina. I shared a video that I saw come across my feed that she was running during a July 4th parade. I'm sure I would get pretty tired doing that, and she is quite a few decades older than me. So, she is showing herself to be in good health, which of course is a concern when you talk about older lawmakers.
Sure. Well, we will see what happens. Obviously, we have a couple months out until the primary, but a decision in Maine is going to have to happen before that ballot deadline comes up real quickly. Victoria, thanks. Always a pleasure. Victoria Churchill is a political reporter covering the Hill for the Daily Mail.